Today's guest is one of the most extraordinary people I've had the pleasure of knowing, Mary Maker. Mary was born in South Sudan, and she's not even sure what year she was born because she fled war as a toddler and spent a decade growing up in a refugee camp in Kenya. During her time in Kenya, she was able to learn 6 different languages, and today she's advocating for refugees at the UN, co-founding nonprofits, fighting for education and period poverty, writing a memoir, and creating a one-woman show all at the same time. In this conversation, we talk about what it means to be an exceptional refugee.
The idea of the exceptional refugee forgets or is made to forget the silent refugee, the one caged behind camp walls, the one who lines up at 3 a.m. for cornmeal and a bar of soap, the one schools ignores, the one who applies to 50 institutions but is denied for lacking 20% of the fees, the one who goes from office to office to cover the hidden cost of taking that flight to a university, who lacks document, who doesn't even understand what document she needs, who can't afford exams nor travel to the exam test, whose Wi-Fi keeps cutting when trying to submit the commoner, the one who menstruates in camps, the one who lactates in camps, marries in camps, dies at camp, silent Venuses, but not really silent, just not heart-trapped. And so the exceptional refugee comes to represent us all, but she doesn't know us all.
The moment she realized that if she didn't change, she might die in that camp, and she even reads from her writing live, and I had chills. Let's get into it. Mary, it's so good to see you. Like we said, it's been a really long time since we've caught up. Why don't you tell me what you've been up to? Tell me all the things.
I feel like I'm one of those persons that is everywhere all at once. You
are.
I feel like since the last time we met, I've just been doing 7, 8 things at the same time, like from advocating for refugees at the UN to working full time for my nonprofit at Elimisha Kakuma, which provides opportunities for refugees to access higher education, to producing, shows for period monologue, which is, I advocate for another small nonprofit called Could You, which works on eradicating period poverty globally. And then I've been writing. So as I said, I'm everywhere all at once, from creating music or creating plays to standing on stages and advocating for refugees.
You've been writing as well. What have you been writing?
I'm writing 2 projects at the same time, which I'm not recommending anyone to ever do that. I'm writing a play, a one-woman show, and I'm also writing a memoir about my life, which it's harder than I thought,
Yeah, I imagine. So you're writing a play and a memoir. How far along are you on both of those?
Pretty, with the play, we are far in, at least we're in the middle. I should have like a shitty rough draft by April. While with the memoir, I've been writing now since, I think, June of last year. And a memoir is a little bit harder. You might think I was born and then I went to school and boom, that's it, in the little less than 30 years that I've been alive. And then I start one little chapter and you realize that there's so much in that mini chapter. So me and my friend Deandra, who is helping me write the memoir, we did something last weekend in Virginia, of just kind of like coming up with the entire timeline, and I feel pretty much like more organized now in diving in. While the play, it's more poetic, it's more I could run through my life easily with that. The memoir is a little bit detailed.
I can't wait to see the play and read the book. I think that it would help. I know you and I know your story, but I think it would help anyone who's listening to get your background. Before we dive into that, you and I met, it has been a year and a half or 2 years ago about at the UN week in New York, and you were there. I met you at Goal's house. Remind me why you were there.
We were there at Goal's house. I think I had spoken earlier before coming to the event on climate action, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I was there for what was I there for? It was Women in Philanthropy.
Oh,
And
okay.
Josie, who is the CEO of Choose Love, was moderating that conversation. And I just got to talk about the refugee experience, given that year's theme was literally leaving no one behind. And refugees are often left behind in any kind of setting, whether that is technology or workforce and all of these things. Like we grow up in refugee camps, you are an afterthought. And many a
Yeah.
time we never get to be in the rooms where decisions about us are being made. So I was there in that panel before I met you in that little table when I was ordering fries, I think.
You
But
were ordering fries.
yes.
So tell me how you got from, well, I don't want your memoir, the whole memoir, because we can buy the book, but in
Yes.
a condensed version, what is your story? So from the birth of Mary to today, how did you get to where you are working with the UN, having co-founding two startups, social startups, and writing and in a play and making music and speaking and just being delightful?
Oof. Okay. Grab your tea because we're about to dig in. I was born in a small little town in South Sudan. I think around 1996 or 97. I have no idea. It's in between those 2 years, and I was born in a town that was the first SPLA military base in the then Sudan, and SPLA stands for Sudan People Liberation Army. This was back then. It was called a rebel group that was fighting for a more unified, more secular South Sudan, or South Sudan was not built by then. Okay, a more secular, more unified Sudan.
Yeah.
Following the Sharia laws and all of that. So the Southerners weren't like quite represented in the government. And I'm not going to bore you with all the history of the civil war in South Sudan, but with the formation of this group, there was another civil war in South Sudan that has been going on until we finally found independence in 2011. But
Wow.
before that, back in the 90s, the civil war displaced millions and millions of South Sudan, and we fled everywhere. Back then, Sudan was one of the biggest, or not one, it was the biggest country in Africa. So we are bordering Egypt, we are bordering Ethiopia, Chad, Congo, Kenya, Uganda, like you can imagine how large it is. And refugees or Sudanese were fleeing to every single corner that was closer to them.
Yeah.
My mom fled to Ethiopia first, and the Ethiopian refugee camps were flooded with the refugees.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and I know today we're talking about aid, and there's too many wars to count. Back then, resources weren't available for refugees to, everything that the UN does come from donations from people or from countries. And the Ethiopian camps were full. It was all the cholera outbreak or the jiggers outbreak or insufficient food or insufficient funds. And so my mom was like, there's no way we are going to survive in
Yeah.
this refugee camp. So we left Sudan, came back to a small little town at the border of Ethiopia and Sudan, but then Sudan, called Buma. My younger sister was born. And right after, it wasn't even a year after she was born, we were attacked again in this small little town, and we had to cross the next border into Kenya. And boom, we get to Kakuma Refugee Camp, which is
Okay.
located in northwestern part of Kenya. Um, I just remember being at that borderline. I think my
Yeah.
memories were starting to get in at that point. I was probably 4 years old or something. And I
That's
used
so
to think of a
little.
borderline as, a line, a physical line and barricades or something like that. But I wasn't seeing anything. In fact, there were just some Kenyan soldiers looking at me and, you catch eyesight and they're like, oh, what a thin child. And I can
Mm.
understand Swahili at that time, but they pity you. I
Yeah.
was this tiny kid with a protruding belly that is almost carrying my entire weight. And
Yeah.
my mother and my uncles are hugging and they're crying and they're looking behind. And I was like, what have they left behind? It has
Yeah.
to be something really big. I think in that moment, they knew that they were taking that new identity, the refugee. And it
Right.
was thousands of people lined up to get into the UNHCR trucks. This is the UN agency that is in charge of refugees. And there was thousands of us, or like hundreds of us, being loaded into these huge trucks to be taken to the reception in Kakuma Refugee Camp. And I remember that engravement of
Yeah.
UNHCR Kakuma Refugee Camp on a small little placket at the roadside. And there were tents and there were people and there were interviewers. And I thought that was going to be the first and last time I was interrogated. My mother sits in a chair. I'm looking at her. There's a translator to translate from English to Dinka. And, there's someone with a paper just going down on notes. And I'm sitting right there. And you get to see your mighty mother not knowing answers to things.
That's hard.
Time. And for her, she's like, what do they want to hear? I just need my
Right.
children to be safe, to kind of see that kind of vulnerability in a parent is different for you as a child. We were
Yeah.
later admitted and got that UNHCR stamp on our paperwork, and it's a piece of paper, they call it the manifest, with the household member and all the kids they own, or like the kids they have. It was my mother, me, and my younger sister. And my mother was pregnant with my third sister. And we walk into the camp, and my mother can recognize faces. She sees some of my uncles that fled to Kakuma earlier, my cousins. I'm introduced to a whole new community, and um, you see the joy, you see the pain in
Yeah.
their eyes, and for the first time in this camp, there's no gunshots. So there's an element of peace. I was like, I like this space, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I don't know how long we are going to be in this space. I was so used to moving and assimilating and learning new languages. In Ethiopia, like my parents are adopting Amharic. We get to Buma, where my younger sister was born. You're learning Taposa and all the other indigenous groups and main languages in those spaces. And then all of a sudden, there's English and Swahili.
How many languages is that at that point?
It's probably close to 6, and your brain is
I was
just
gonna say that's around 6.
from
Yeah.
Arabic to Amharic to Taposa to Dinka to Swahili and then English. And as a child, you just go along with whatever language is being given to you. But I think assimilation was really hard for me because I remember the first time I went to school. It Takwal Nursery School is this camp kindergarten, and there's thousands of kids in that tiny nursery school. We call it nursery school, and then in the US they call it kindergarten. In that nursery school, and we are all little tiny kids, all haven't gone through war. And I remember when my mom dropped me, I was shaken because I thought she was abandoning me there. And then you
I
see
can
all the
imagine.
other kids, with the snots and their nose all crying.
Yeah.
But I used to be like, I wonder if they've seen what I have seen, you know, death,
Yeah.
hunger, pain, even when we can't even name what that is. And
Right.
there was something about school that was peaceful. We all didn't understand each other. We are coming from all different tribes, and Kakuma Refugee Camp has different countries. There's Somalian refugee, Ethiopians, Sudanese, South Sudanese. By that time, it was one country, but we have Ugandans, we have Burundians, we have Congolese, and
Oh, wow.
everyone's right there. In that tiny classroom, there's multiple kids that don't speak English or Swahili. So everyone is speaking in their mother tongue, but there was just, in the gestures that the teacher did, and we all laughed and we all felt safe, And at break times, there was like we would go for porridge. So you can imagine all our tiny hands interlocking and we sing, to
That's
the
so
sweet
sweet.
porridge. As we go to the countertop to get our cups of porridge, and in those times, The little things made us happy. A
Yeah.
torn, like a torn shirt or like a torn trouser with the child's buttocks like showing out, and we'll all just laugh about that. But a child who is shedding their teeth and someone is making fun of you, and in that moment we forgot that we were fleeing war. We
Yeah.
forgot loss of parents. We forgot probably despicable things that we saw happen.
You got
And
to just be kids.
we just got to be kids. And they used to give us dolls. I loved them. They would give us dolls. There was one teacher with one textbooks trying to teach us ABCs, but there was only one book or like two or three for like a classroom of 100. And we will all wait for our turn to look at the pictures. I love the pictures in the books, as they give us for apple. You've never seen an apple. So you're like, oh, strange.
I always wonder about that. I've heard that before from teachers who teach ESL and how it does not work when you are teaching kids from other countries. Like they've never seen some of the things, so they
Yeah.
can't associate it.
I always hope they would teach us with things that we see, H for hibiscus. We knew about the
Yeah,
hibiscus flower. It grows everywhere in South Sudan. That would have been easily relatable. Or like
you're
so when
right.
they take A for aeroplane or something like that, and you're like, interesting. I
That
just
would have
see it
made more
cross in
sense.
the sky once in a while. It was, and the small little things where you're like, okay, I can't relate to this, but I guess now I have to know what an apple is,
Not only do you
and
need to know the word or the letter and the sound, you also have to know the object too.
yes, is it A or is it A? Because
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of languages being translated in your brain, um, and it sounds different in different languages. For instance, in Swahili is A, or like it's A, and then you go to English that probably means E, and I was like, oh, I just can't with learning, but I was safe. I was safe
And
in
you did
that
it.
place,
And
and
you
I
did
did it. I
learn.
think I fell in love with school.
Thank you again for tuning into these podcasts, these stories. And one of the reasons why I get to tell these stories is because of my own career, which is with Shimmick. We match really great companies to really great agencies. And over the last 14 years, we have come across some really incredible people doing really cool things. But mostly, we get to help everyday people too that are just looking for the right PR firm, right marketing agency, right advertising agency, and we're here to help. We want to make your agency search so much easier because we've already done the search for you. We have over 350 agency partners, and they're all talented, and most importantly to me, they're all ethical. And also, we're free to you, the company. Our agencies are the ones that pay us, so it doesn't cost you anything to give us a phone call. You don't need to get your CFO involved. You don't need to get finance involved or whoever is doing that for your company. You can pick up the phone or send us an email, and we can give you kind of the state of the industry, what's trending, and go over some ideas for who might be a good fit. Now that I've shared that with you, let's get back to the conversation.
The moment I was able to write my name on sand,
Yeah.
and there was just something powerful about it. And at that point, like I used to admire people that spoke English. There was like an S at the end of everything, so I would just speak in Dinka and put an S to the end, and I'm like, I'm speaking in English. No, or like potatoes. This
That's
is
so
just
cute.
something fun about it. Like I don't know, and there's a lot of context that goes into that of like English was being seen as a level of literacy or like an element of literacy or like you're educated or something. Well, that was not necessarily true, but in that moment, I was like, I want to know, I want to learn it. I want to be the best in it. So if those ABCs, I'm gonna learn them the best. Um, I grew up in the camp later on. You think you're going to be in the camp for like a temporal moment, for one
Yeah.
month or two, and you realize it's 10 years. You're still
10
in the camp,
years.
or you realize
Ah,
you're now a young teenager in the camp, and you start menstruating in camps. You're seeing people get married in camps. You're seeing people die in camps, and I think that really horrified me for most part of my life. So I'm like, I don't want to die in this refugee camp. There's something
right.
about growing up in a refugee camp that makes it hard to see life outside of the camp because you've never seen it. You've never gotten out of the camp walls. I know they don't exist, but you physically feel trapped in a
Right. So
camp.
you never left the camp in that 10 years.
I left the camp. I went to the other parts of the country, Nakuru, which is a 3-hour drive from Nairobi, the capital of Kenya. And I went to a boarding school. And I think this
But
is where I started to see a life outside of the camp.
okay. So, but before you went to the boarding school, that was it. You were in the camp day in and day out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Day
Wow.
in, day out. It's dry. To give you a little environment of Kakuma Refugee Camp, it's 100 degrees.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
Uh, Fahrenheit, that is. And the lowest it ever gets is around 70 or 60. And it doesn't rain. If it floods, because it rained in the lower parts of the country, in Nairobi or the capital, and then the water goes upstream, and it comes and it washes everything away. So even if it's this refuge place, slowly climate change is eating it away, as we
Yeah.
go. So I go back to the house that we first got in, or like the temporal house that we got in. And right now it's somewhere in the middle of a river, like I
Oh my
can't point
gosh.
it, landslides and all of that. And as kids, you start to feel trapped in this place. Your parents can't work, not because they don't have the skills, but because there's just no jobs.
Yeah. I
You
don't know
know,
how your mom did it. So so there were no jobs. So what did she do? And where was
uh,
your dad?
My father was still in Sudan fighting
Okay.
the war, right? He was a soldier. He was like, I will never be a refugee. I cannot accept to be a refugee. I'm a soldier. I'm a father, and I need that. And
Wow.
I saw my mom struggle with that title and the refugee, and she was in the camp, but her heart was in Sudan. She's like, in Sudan, I can become a fisherman or like fisherwoman. I could go and farm. I could go and do things. In the camp, you're trapped. Like the Kenyan laws allow you to work, but getting a work permit is impossible, right?
Right.
Leaving the camp is almost impossible. You need a permission slip to leave the camp,
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
and
Yeah.
it's 100 degrees. So how can you farm? It's
Right.
impossible, right? There was so many times when I was in Nairobi illegally because you're just supposed to be in the camp settlement and you would see the police walking and looking for you. And I would go to different shops or something like that. And it doesn't help that I'm a South Sudanese. We have very specific complexion. You have very specific height. You cannot hide. They'll find you. So
Oh my
many a times you see the police. There was a time, I think, after the Westgate Mall attack that happened in Kenya by Al Shabaab. There was
Oh, I remember
just so
that.
much. There was just so much like looking for people that didn't look Kenyan. And I think this was the first time I hear the word terrorism and refugee in one sentence, and it didn't make sense to me. Like refugees are seeking refuge. They're running away from the same people that are attacking
Right.
you. But you could
They're
like
running away
people will
from
see
terror.
but people
Yeah.
would see you as a threat. And these Chimamanda talks about the dangers of a single story. When people don't know you or have never seen you, they fear you. That's just human nature. We fear that which we don't know.
Yeah.
And so I feel like many Kenyans honestly didn't know who refugees were. Because again, you're isolated from the rest of the country.
Right.
There was fear at that time, or like Islamophobia starting to come in, even when Kenya is it's a country that has both religions, like religious practices, very open to everybody. And I I would go back and forth to the camp, even when I was in boarding school, and I started to see the difference. You
Yeah.
know, in boarding school, there was like almost 25 to 30 of us in a classroom. We had different teachers. We had a Christian religion education teacher. We had a social studies teacher. We had a math teacher. We don't learn biology at that point yet. We had a science teacher. In the camp, you have one teacher almost teaching all those subjects, and you're 200 of you in a classroom. There's probably 7 textbooks for all of you. It's all benches wedged together. And in this boarding school that I went to in Nakuru, like you have your own textbook, you have your own bag, you have a pencil. In the camp, a pencil is shared among three. It's cut into like it's broken into three parts, and you have to sharpen it. A book is torn apart, and you're given one paper to share. And how are you going to do homework? You can't do in a refugee camp like that. And I started to dream of a life outside of the camp. But there's something funny about being born in a fragile community. You can see the fragility. To some point, that gets to save you. You get to be a normal kid without longing for what you don't have. But to some
Yeah.
point, that you don't dream. You don't dream of college. You don't dream of jobs because you're not seeing it, right? Even when you go to high school and they're teaching you about the pulley, elevator, you've never seen them. How do you
Right.
dream?
You don't know what it
How
is.
becoming an engineer or something like that when it doesn't even exist in the camp. And those that fled to the camp as doctors, as engineers, as nurses can't practice it because their paperwork doesn't apply in this new country anymore. And I was so hungry of getting out of that camp. I knew it was
Yeah.
going to be a hard one. During that time when I was in high school, I lost my parents. I lost both my mom and my dad. And then all of a sudden, you have to now not only take on the refugee title, you have to take on the orphan title too, and there was a lot of orphan drives happening, and I hated them. It shook me because it made it real. It
Right.
made it, my parents no longer existed. But the crazy thing in the camp, that is a very common story. Most
Yeah.
people don't have parents, and so like I remember when I would go to some speeches and I would talk about the loss of my parents, and people would be like, "Oh my God, Mary, how did you make it as a 13-year-old taking care of three of your siblings and going to school at the same time?" And I would some of my relatives that had never grown up in the camp would cry anytime they would see me, but I didn't feel it because I'm like, well, in the camp I have people that have worse than me, or
Right.
like it's it's that kind of fragility that made it easy for me to live,
Yeah.
uh, but also really hard for me to imagine myself in a different space where I could thrive.
Did you feel that, I guess my question is, how did you get to boarding school? And then, so what I'm hearing is like you're in this camp with what feels like no way out, and you found a way out.
Yeah.
What do you think made you different than some people who are still there?
My father was a soldier in Sudan and one of the founding fathers of the South Sudan. So he served both the Sudanese government and the South Sudanese government. He had money to take me to a boarding school. In fact, like I think most of the time when I was in the refugee camp, people were like, "How are you in this camp and your father is a general?" I'm like, "Political persecution? Don't you know about that?" Or something like that. So I remember the first time my father came to the camp, and he's like, with this level of writing, there's no way you're going to succeed in school. He knew that it was going to be really hard for me to succeed in the camp. So he paid for a boarding school for me to go to. But the problem happens is when he died, then who is going to pay that? It's a lot of money to go to school.
Yeah.
So I would be chased out of school. I would try to sneak back into school, and
Oh my gosh.
the ultimate result was actually me going to Kakuma, going back to the camp. And in the camp, this is after high school, I became a teacher. I can
Oh,
never
wow.
afford college because it's impossible. Like, I don't have a job. I can't work in Kenya, or if I can, it's going to be impossible to get job because they're going to prioritize Kenyans first. So I am in the camp. I can't even get a loan to go to college despite getting good grades because you don't have security or like something that you'll
Mhm.
show that if you don't pay, we will take something from you. Right. So
Yeah.
I become a teacher in the camp. And when I'm teaching, there's all these kids that are like, "Oh, you're so passionate about education. Why aren't you in college?" And I think that used to shake me because they saw the dead end in the camp. At this point, this is around 2018, 2017. And I am a high school teacher. I am being paid $70 a month. and I think I'm very rich. Okay. So at the end of the month,
Wow.
when I get my pay, I would change it into a dollar bill or like 1 cent, 100 Kenya shilling. I don't know how much that is. That's $1. 100 Kenya shillings. So I'll have it in my bed and, I'm playing 50 cent dollar bill. Yeah. And I just feel like, oh, I've made it until you realize, oh, taxes, or like
Okay, we
until
all
you
feel that.
realize, or until you realize that there's a long line of women outside of your door being like, we're hungry, we don't have money. You're a teacher, at least you can eat in school. And you start to give out all your salary. In 2 days, you have no money. And you're like, what? This is impossible. This is hard.
It
And
is
I
hard.
knew like being a teacher was not going to be the end. Like I'm barely being paid. They didn't even call it a pay; they call it incentive teaching. You're being
Wow.
given a small stipend, not and you're teaching from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, like almost 12-hour shift. And I'm not a
That is
trained
a
teacher
12-hour
either.
shift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're not a trained teacher either. So there's that part of you is like, oh, I hope I'm not lying to these kids. So you're reading at night to make sure that you're giving the students the right information. These students are going to compete with the rest of the country. How do
Right.
they win? When Mary
Yeah.
is their teacher. Or like when most of the teachers 80% of the teaching force is actually refugees teachers, but most of them are not trained. The few teachers that could allow themselves to come teach in a refugee camp, already it's hardship. It's a hardship environment for you to come and teach in, meaning you're not going to you're not going to be seeing your family a lot. That's why there weren't a lot of actual trained Kenyan teachers that wanted to teach in the refugee camp, right?
Right.
So the odds were already against me, and I was trying to apply for everything. At this point, the camp has close to 300,000 refugees. That's an
Oh my
entire
goodness.
city.
That
Okay,
is
uh,
massive.
it's big. There's thousands and thousands of refugees graduating from high school, but again, no one has money to go to college. So what happens is so many girls give up at this point. There's marriage. It's an option. Giving birth to kids in the camp, I was like, God forbid, there's no way that is happening to me. So I
Wow.
started searching for opportunities or anything that I could land my hands into. And there were very few scholarships coming to the camp. There was one that came, it was from Rwanda, and they were looking for 2 students. Thousands of us applied.
That's it.
Yes, I was
That is
among the
so
two.
hard. How did you keep yourself I just feel like so many people would be thinking like 2 students. I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah. Oh, I knew I was a talker. I was like, I'm going to give it a chance. I was like, if I'm going to fail, at least I tried. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
like, I sat back and I waited. I applied for it. There was WUSC, that it's more like Wild University Services of Canada. It was coming, it was taking 25 students. There were like probably 3 main scholarship back then. We had Daffy scholars. It will take you to schools within the country. But I was like, and then what happens when I graduate with a master's? Come back to the refugee camp? That doesn't make sense to me. So
No.
this scholarship that came, it wasn't a scholarship. It was a program in Rwanda that would prep me for colleges, and they wanted 2 people. I was among the 2, and then all of a
Amazing.
sudden now I have to take, a flight to Rwanda. I know nothing about Rwanda apart from the Rwandan genocide at that moment. I don't have any documentations. I don't know how to access documentation. So I sneak out of the camp and I go to Nairobi, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the Sudanese embassy. I go to the South Sudanese embassy. I'm like, hi, I'm South Sudanese. I need a traveling document to go to Rwanda. And the first thing is like, are you a refugee? Of course, I'm not going to tell them yes, because then that means, like, unless you repatriate, we cannot give you any documents. So I'm
Oh,
like, no,
wow.
I am not a refugee. My name is,
Oh
I
my
give
god.
them my full name, which was somehow stupid because in Sudan, everyone will know where your family is from just your name. And they're like, are you sure you're not a refugee? I'm like, no. And then the trick question is like, when is your birthday? There you say January 1st. Almost every refugee has a January 1st birthday. I'm like, hell no. So I went with June 18th. I was like, middle of the year, that's easy to come. I didn't want an odd number. I went with an even number. And I became a Gemini. I should have read astrology
I'm a
before I did.
Gemini.
Okay. I came up on June 18th. They gave me my first documents. It was like literally a paper with my face stamped on it. And I took a flight to Rwanda. I was taking chances because I didn't know if this was a scam. I'm like, may God help that this is true. I made
Oh
it to
my God.
Rwanda. And Deidre, who I'm currently writing my memoir with,
Yeah.
picked me up at the airport. And when I'm nervous,
No
I just
way.
talk. I just went on. I was like, yappa, yappa, yappa. And she took me to the program. And in the program, it was more like, this is not a scholarship. This is a 16-month program. If you don't get any opportunity, it means you're going to go back home, which means the refugee camp. And I was
Oh
like, you know
gosh.
what? I'm going to give it my all. For the first time, you are being introduced to a laptop. Like there's no way I was going to win in college if I can't even type a letter or anything. In a paper, yes, I could, but with a laptop, no, I couldn't. We were discussing on race in America, like learning how to like critical thinking and all of this. And I'm being introduced to SATs. I'm like, why do I have to do the math side of SATs?
Yeah. You had to
So
take the SATs?
Yes, I had to take the
Oh,
SATs. And
okay.
I do know American parents that probably prepping their kids in high school or something like that. This is post high school. Okay. I'm learning all of this all at once. I did the Duolingo English tests to kind of like show my proficiency in English at that time. And I get accepted to St. Olaf College, Minnesota.
Right.
Right.
Not the same climate.
Yeah. But number one, I was just happy. I remember
Yeah.
getting that admission, and all my classmates in Rwanda were like, lifting me up and like, yes, you're going to college. I'm like, what school did I get into? They're like, all of them, I'm like, is that even a school? But like,
You're like,
and I was
that's
like, we
funny.
will do we will do the research later. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to go to Minnesota and all of that. And in few months, you now have to think about documentation, going to like, the US embassy to do like your interview. And the interviews are usually so funny. They're like, are you a terrorist? Who is going to say yes? I'm like, no.
Are you serious? Like, that is the question.
Like,
Yes.
have you ever hosted a terrorist? Are you thinking of committing crimes in America? I'm like, no,
Ye
I'm not thinking
What?
of no crime or anything like that. The embassy is such a scary place, and there's this person who is asking you, and you're tensing and you're panicking, and like there's a lot of money that has been paid for you to even be in that place. The visa fees and all of that. And I'm like, oh, can't wait to go to America, and boom, I land in Minnesota. And there was a generous woman who became my host family, who became a really close friend of mine. She's more like a mother to me. She picks me up, and I'm so tired. I'm jet lagged. I sleep for I don't know how many hours after that. And for the first time, because I had not taken a tour to St. Olaf, she takes me.
Right, you just went. You just got
Yep,
on a plane.
yep. So I'm going to do this tour. Like it looks like Hogwarts. This school is so beautiful. And I can't
Yeah.
believe this is going to be my home for the next 4 years. I go to the libraries and you're seeing all these books, and you go to the dining hall and there's all this food. And there's that little traumatic part of you that is comparing it to the refugee camp. And there were so many times when I had to pinch myself and be like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm here. And in college, I really wanted to take advantage of everything. I was the overcommitted rapture. I was in every club, running club, chess club,
You're like, "I'll
anything else.
try it."
I'm going to be a college kid by all means possible. I'm doing
Oh
everything
my
just to
gosh.
fit in. And there's that little part of you that is like, no, I need to open more opportunities for kids that I left behind.
So
At
tell
this
me about
point,
that. Yeah. Oh,
at
go
this
ahead.
point, before coming to Minnesota, 2018, I was asked to do a TED Talk by the TED Talk community. I don't even know what that is, but I'll do it. So
How did they find you? So at that point, how?
I
Did you
think
get asked
the
to do a
TED
TED like
community, it
yeah.
was the first TED Talk or like TEDx talk to happen in a refugee camp.
Oh,
And
okay.
I remember they approached me when I was still a teacher in the camp. Do you want to do a TED talk and all of this? And I'm like, does it involve me speaking in front of people? I accept, you know. But like shortly afterwards, I had been accepted to the program in Rwanda. So I had left the camp. And I remember the TED community like calling me, like, you're still doing that TED talk. And I went to Deidre. I'm like, what's a TED talk? She's like, oh, that's probably I shouldn't have asked because we started getting a lot of homeworks on TED Talks, you know. Uh, and like, oh, I'm doing one of those. She's like, what? Yes. So I remember flying to Kakuma to go do the TED Talk, and it got 1 million views. I'm like, okay, I like this TED Talk thing, you know.
I like this TED
And
Talk thing.
probably it played a big role in me getting accepted to college, you know. And so now I am in I am in Minnesota, and um uh, where am I again before I said this? I'm very ADHD, like my brain was going so fast before I talked about the TED Talk. Where am I?
Wait, what?
I'm like, what am I saying before I talked about the TED Talk?
Oh, what were you saying before the TED Talk? Oh, you were saying, so you did your 4 years. You did everything. You tried everything. You're like the epitome of that song from that movie, Zootopia. Try everything.
Child.
And yes, that one. Okay, so you did it all. You tried everything. You had your host mom there by your
Yeah.
side. And then what did you graduate with? I don't actually know what your degree is in.
Oh, no. I graduated with it, and I think my brain is coming back to it. Yes. So I am in Minnesota. Like I am at St. Olaf College, and I think in that point I had already done my TED talk. So there's that part where I'm like, oh, there's all these opportunities in front of me, and this I left a whole community behind. It's like
Right.
you leave the camp, but the camp never leaves you. And so, as a freshman student in college, me and three of my friends decided to start a nonprofit to kind of like help students
Okay.
get
And
into
that's when you
college.
started your nonprofit. And what is it called again?
Elimisha Kakuma, which means educate. Elimisha in Swahili means educate, and Kakuma is the name of the camp. So
Oh,
Elimisha Kakuma. We started it when I was still a freshman student. Me, Deidre, and Dane Dudi, who were the other students that also got into the program in Rwanda. Now, here's the magic. It was three of us in this program in Rwanda. It was actually four of us by this time from the camp. And Judy and Ding were like a year ahead of me. Judy got into Harvard from the
wow.
refugee camp. Ding
Wow.
into George Washington in DC.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
and I got into St. Olaf, and I'm like, okay, you know what? If a refugee kid can get into the camp, what if we start a similar program, but in the camp? To actually help students dream of universities. When I got into school, I'm like, I've never even heard about this college. I had never heard of Harvard. You know, I had never heard of all these big universities. And yet, for three of us, of the co-founders for this program, we got in. But we got in because there was a lot of preparation. There was a lot of, like opening our minds to universities. And I
Yeah, you
wanted
still had to
kids
prove
in the camp.
yourself. You
So,
had to take your
yeah,
SATs. You had to do the
right.
learning. So it wasn't a handout.
No. It was a lot of work, but we got it.
Yeah.
And so, like, as a freshman student, I'm like, what if we do this in the camp? What if we actually train kids about the Common App? We actually train kids to take SATs. They're already smart. We have kids with A's in the camp. But like, because they've never dreamt of a life. I talked about fragility. When you've never been outside, you can't dream of something that you've never seen.
No.
And so the four of us started Elimisha Kakuma. I was a freshman student, which was a stupid idea to do a nonprofit when you're still a college kid. But we
But you
really
did
wanted
everything.
to. We did everything. And in that first year, it was around COVID 2020.
Oh my
We
gosh.
started Elimisha Kakuma. And we just wanted to do a pilot program with 5 students. Deidre had her master's in education, and she's the one who helped us get into college. So we knew, like, she knew how to navigate the system. We wanted 5 students, 100 applied,
Oh
100
wow.
applied. And I remember all of us just crying on like, oh, who do we take? We ended up taking 12 students, $0 in our account, It's a nonprofit. And Duty, who goes to Harvard, was in the camp that time doing like a study abroad thing in the camp, helping kids learn how to code. And he really helped us, bring students to a center. We started borrowing computers for the students to. There's no way they're going to apply for a Common App without a computer, something. We
Right.
started teaching them how to type, using typing quest and all of this. And within 10, 16 months, student got in. All the 12 students got accepted into universities,
That's amazing.
and I think it just opened our brains to no, our job as Elimisha Kakuma, as one of our college counselors put it, is to translate the camp context to universities and help universities see the refugee camp. Because most universities also didn't understand the refugee camp. So
Yeah.
one summer, we invited some of the universities that were already making their rounds to Kenya, why don't you visit the refugee camp? And they came to the camp. And some of them broke down because they're like, how do these kids get to thrive in this environment? And that year we had a student get accepted to UC Berkeley. That's a big school.
That's
Fast
amazing.
forward to 5 years or 6 years now, we've placed more than 47 students to one of the top universities around the world here in the US, Canada, in the UK. We've acquired over $20 million in scholarships. It's huge,
Incredible.
And I think that's what we were doing. When I came to school, I was like, it cannot just be me. I need more people like
Yeah.
Mary to get into universities. At that very same time, I was a high-profile supporter for UNHCR, the refugee agency, and
How
I'm being invited to spaces.
yeah.
I think it was
How
after
did
the
you
TED
get
Talk.
connected with the UN?
After the TED Talk, after that
The
1
TED Talk.
million,
Okay.
after the million views, the UN is like, "Do you want to represent us?" I'm like, it depends. Do I get to talk about, the refugee experience as it is? And then really, it was a big chance to be a UN ambassador because then I get to be in the rooms where it happens.
Yes.
As a small little kid in the camp, I used to be like, I wish these organizations really understand the
Yeah,
refugee
earlier you had
experience.
said that. You had said earlier that, people make decisions, but no one is in the room actually representing the people.
Or if they're in the room, not people with lived experience are in the room.
Right.
It's one thing to come to the camp and feel compassionate about it. It's another thing to actually live in the camp and
Yeah.
see so many ways for solutions, and yet people don't invite you to the space. And that in itself, what does that mean? I know many people started to be like, okay, we need refugees in the room, but it was more like a refugee was in the room, tick. I was disturbed by that. I'm like, I need action. Let's say
Yeah.
the UN General Assembly, we have all of these countries, over 172 member states to the UN. And then there's Mary representing more than 125 million displaced refugees. There is no
Wow.
way Kakuma Refugee Camp experience is the same with a refugee being a refugee in Jordan or in Colombia. These are whole different experiences, but point blank, we both lost our homes, right?
Right. Yeah.
And wanted investors, I wanted countries to get to learn that. So in the little 3 minutes I get at the UN, I'm like, how do I make it count? Because God
That's
knows how
huge.
many
Yeah.
people like me are in this room today.
That's a
You
lot
know,
of weight to
it is
carry.
a lot of weight. It is a lot of weight. And many a times I'm like, I want you guys to see us. I want you guys to acknowledge us. I want you guys to invest in us. May it just not end with Mary was in the room, the refugee was in the room, tick for your statistics. I really wanted people to go beyond that. Of next year when we come back, can you give me the actions that actually happened? Did you actually employ refugees? Did you involve them in the creation of solutions? Because we do have the solution. It's so easy for someone else to come and be like, I know how to fix your problems. And they give you
Right.
completely different solution. And we become the grateful refugees because otherwise we become the ungrateful refugee, right?
Right. You have to
You
just
feel like,
accept
oh,
it.
yeah. But the reality probably didn't solve anything for
Probably
you.
not. No.
Right? How do I start working on AI when I don't even have electricity?
That
Right?
is
You know,
ridiculous.
it's small little things
Absurd.
like, or like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to teach you coding. I don't have a laptop. Let's start with the
Right.
basic. No,
Let's
it's
start with A for apple. What's an apple?
was it? Could you give me an apple so that I see
Yeah.
how it
Send
looks?
some apple. Like, we need to start there.
Yes, it's all the basic needs. It's in the camp we have midwives. My younger
Oh,
sister
yeah.
was born at home. We have midwives that fled the war. Why don't you give those women certification so that they
Yeah.
actually get to help people in the camp? In the camp, we had to wait for like Wednesday or Friday for the doctor to fly in from Nairobi to come and treat patients. And then there's a
Wow.
long line of refugees waiting to be given penicillin or like paracetamol for a disease that is completely off, right?
Yeah.
The lack of medical, like, I never had an ambulance in the camp ever, right? And yet,
Wow.
the help would have been easily found within the community.
Because you
We,
have doctors.
when you flee, all your profession don't disappear. You
Right.
it,
Yeah. You have surgeons. You have, right.
Yes, it's different demography. We have those that also don't have skills that need training, but we also have people that fled as professors in Khartoum.
Yeah.
You know, people with so much skills that can actually contribute to the economy of the country.
Oh, my,
And
yeah.
I think that's my job as a goodwill ambassador. How do I make the decision makers in the room to see that the solution is right here with us?
Have
And
you
how
made any progress?
we've made a lot of progress. I feel like there has been a lot of refugee-led organizations that are coming up all around the camp. For instance, even with Elimisha Kakuma in the last 5 years, placing all the students to universities, right?
Yeah.
I think being in the room really has helped me like to change the perspective. Like, what about this? Have you thought about this? Why don't you bring more voices to the table? Because again, as Mary, I got out. I get to be
Yeah.
the exceptional refugee, and that in itself is a weight to carry. You know, why
It
I want
is.
to
Yeah.
create more voices in the room because I will have one perspective on how to solve it. But what about others? I got to college. Many don't get to, not because they're not capable, but because access is not there with them. Right.
Right.
I got so much into advocacy, and I talked earlier about like the work that I do with women on ending period poverty. So,
Yeah. Tell me about
yeah,
that.
advocating for another small organization. It's called Could You? And it's a question mark of like, could you use a menstrual cup? I remember I was like, what's a menstrual cup? I have never seen it. And the first time I saw it,
They
I'm
are
like,
fairly new. Yeah.
I'm like, is it a cup of tea? But the problem is
Oh,
like, this thing
not
has
quite.
been around for like over 80 to 100 years. The cup has
Okay.
been
I
there.
didn't even know that.
Yeah. But the thing is that you've never seen it. When you've never seen it, number one, you're afraid of it. You don't know how to use it. You have no idea. And I remember when the woman, the CEO, her name is Christine Garde Denning, she approached me and she's like, have you ever used a menstrual cup? Because in one of my speeches, I was talking about how as a refugee girl, during your menstruation, you have to be home. Or like you have to wait for the UN to give you pads twice a year.
That's it.
How do you ration a pad? And it leaks and you sit on it in a classroom and you can't stand up and you're afraid of people to laugh at you. And so many girls end up just like dropping out of school.
That's so
Menstrual
sad.
products should be a part of our school uniform, and not just for refugee women, for women all around the world. And when I joined this organization, I'm a theater kid too, so I was like, I want to see how women all over the world get to deal with period poverty. Crazy thing, right here in New York City. I interviewed women. I was working with a producer back then. We interviewed women, and most of them, like, you have 4 girls, a box of tampons is probably like 20 bucks, so like 18 or 15.
It's
If you have
insanely
four girls,
expensive.
if you
Yeah.
have 4 girls and you're a woman yourself, that easily costs you 250 a month. Most people
Yeah.
can't afford that. On top of that, electricity bills, like the expensive rent in New York City and all of that. And many people we interview, like, how many times have you used your bikini bottom? you know, or
Yeah.
like waddle toilet paper, or like go into a restroom and your periods just magically like come without any warning. And there's that little vending machine with tampons that is like 25 cents. And I'm like, who carries 25 cents in their
No
pocket?
one carries 25 cents.
Like it's all those small little things. We interviewed women in Ukraine at that time. I'm like, have you
Wow.
ever thought about menstruation in war? You know,
Okay, I have, but that's because I'm a warrior, a
mm,
worrier, and I'm always thinking about, like, could I, would I, how do you? But I think most people don't.
what's it on?
And I have thought about
Because
that because I see mothers. What I think about a lot is actually diapers and formula more than anything else. And we usually think more about the babies, but less about the women.
yeah. And I started doing this series of monologues and interviewing women. And you get to see the struggle is so simple. I'm like, how do we make bombs and all these other things? But there's never been like a solution to ending period poverty. And it happens every day. Kids aging out of foster care or things like that. These are small little things that we can easily solve, and yet we don't. So the menstrual cup, I remember when she showed it to me, and she's like, this is the CEO of the organization. Is like, oh, you can use this for 10 years. I'm like, what? 10 years? That would have saved me so much money. And I remember going to the bathroom and I was scared. I didn't know how to fold it and how to insert it and how to take it out. And there was just like a lot of technical thing. I'm like, oh, I don't know. When I don't have even a relationship with my own body, how do I insert something down there? And down there is a
Yeah.
foreign place to kind of like, get to talk about it. I'm like, I need to have a talking circle where I can talk to youth and kids about how do they handle this? You know,
Yeah.
I remember when tampons were coming around, like people were scared of them. Like, oh, what if it breaks my virginity? What if this happens? It's the same thing with the
Mm.
people. Like, oh, this is too big. Well, what if it affects my body? And it's a
And
lot of
those are legitimate questions.
they are.
If you
I'm like,
yeah.
I was scared too. I asked these questions. I'm like, what is it made out of? Okay, silicone. It doesn't get to react to my body. Good. I don't get to dispose it every month. So environmentally friendly. Yay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I would go to the supermarket and it's kind of like this luxury thing. It's on the top shelf. You can't even like see it, so like many people that get to use it is more like, oh, environmental conservation, something like that. I'm like, I want other girls to get to use it. Imagine if this was available for me in a refugee camp, then I
How
wouldn't have
many days of
missed.
school did you miss? You
Oh,
know?
or like how many days do girls get to miss? And so like I really became so big on menstrual cups and kind of like helping distribute these cups. This small little organization has done so much amazing work. It operates in 14 countries in Africa, and they just do
Wow.
nonprofit is 501c3, distributing cups. And I'm like, okay, it's part of my advocacy. If I'm going to talk about education, again, menstrual products should always be a part of our uniform as women.
Thank you again for tuning into this podcast. I want to take a quick moment to thank Carrie of CMCK Media. He has an amazing podcast studio and incredible editing capabilities, and there's no way that I ever could have produced this podcast at this quality and caliber without him. So go give his website a visit and find him on LinkedIn. He has some pretty good stories to share too. That is something you don't think about. See, and this is what you mean when you say, like, I'm so myself also tired of like people, I don't know who they are, people gathering in a room, coming up with solutions without having the actual experts. They're always like, oh, we have experts in the room. Well, but you don't, because they don't have a lived experience and they're not thinking about that. I could never go into a room and pretend like I had the same lived experience, even as maybe my neighbor down the street, right? Like only you know what it's like. Only you know. And you're right, it is the little things. And I just am so impressed by all of your advocacy work. You've worked with Duolingo as
Yes.
well. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit more about that.
Oh, I love Duolingo. I think it's one of
I do
those
too.
organizations that I really not only advocate for, but really believe in their mission. Did you know the CEO of Duolingo is actually a refugee from Guatemala?
No, I did not know that.
Yes. Yes, he is. And
I didn't, no.
Louis von, I don't know why I forget the second name, but he and his team have really done an amazing work of, language, something so simple yet so hard. I talked about like how English becomes this, test of proficiency, and
Right.
it becomes really hard for people moving or like refugees moving from one country to another, where they're speaking their mother tongue and they're so smart in their mother tongue. I'm like, I wish you knew how smart I was in Dinka, you know? Or like,
Oh, yeah.
I wish you knew how smart I was in Swahili before I start getting tested in English or things like that. And I really love what Duolingo has been able to do in terms of, it's not just the app and the owl that is telling you to practice your
The
German or like
owl.
your Arabic, but they do a lot of work on access and creating access. They do lingo scholars, like refugees from all over the world. And it's this program that also works like Elimisha Kakuma that has placed, I don't know how many students so far, but I know it's over 30 to 40 students to universities, top universities here, from
Wow.
kind of like helping them again take those English proficiency tests that will make universities be like, okay, this student does exist. And I remember when I was sitting for SATs and TOEFL, I did TOEFL before I did the Duolingo English test, which is TOEFL stands for Test of English as a Second Language. It's
Mm,
almost 200 bucks for that test.
oh
Okay.
my gosh.
Uh,
Okay.
Imagine as a refugee, how can you afford this when I was
It's
big paid $70 a month? Okay.
$70 and you're giving it away.
And and then you have to go to a specific testing place to go do the exams. So if you're in a place where A, there's no Wi-Fi, A, or B, there's no person to come and invigilate you as you're taking the test, you have to travel from Kakuma to Nairobi to go take the test. When Duolingo is, you can do it on your phone. The
Right.
Duolingo English test, and then they've been able to give refugees free vouchers to take these tests, or like
That's so
students
cool.
coming from low income environments. And I'm like, oh,
Which is
I
all of
really
them.
love. Yes. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I love the work they get to do. The Duolingo, they've been doing this thing where it's called the DAT Con, or like Duolingo English Tests Conference. And they bring in 300 universities, or like, I don't know if I'm giving the right number, but they bring in a lot of universities to come and talk about, creating access for students that can't, you know,
Right.
uh, be on their campuses, and why the test is really important for universities to see, like, okay, they might not speak in an accent, but that doesn't mean they're not smart,
Right.
and
So, what was your connection with Duolingo? So, you use the app, but I feel like you did a partnership with them too.
yes. So in 2022, Elimisha Kakuma was awarded student advocacy by Duolingo
Oh, cool. Okay.
because of the work that we do. They recognize our effort and the work that we've been able to do. And I remember going to take that award on behalf of my team. And I was on that stage and I'm like, oh, to be here today. You know how hard it is to be even on that little podium with all these universities looking at me.
Oh,
And
and then having to represent your entire camp.
yes, and having to represent my entire camps and so many other displaced kids. And
Yeah.
I was able to talk to why that mission for Duolingo creating access is really important for people like me,
Yeah.
that could have never dreamt of university,
There
and
was so many things you had to overcome. It
yeah,
wasn't even like you couldn't dream of it. It was even if you could, like you said, there was nothing working in your favor.
how do you win? How do you win in a refugee when
How
you don't
I wanna
have
know, how
teachers that
do
are
you
trained?
win? Yeah.
It's
You
it's
just keep
hard to
trying.
win. You just have to keep trying. You have to almost like self motivate yourself, or like
Yeah.
self motivation. You have to go past your trauma without a therapist. You have to therapize yourself.
Was that for me?
Oh, sorry. Thanks. You have to therapize yourself. Um, you have to be happy and
Yeah.
look past your pain. You have to be the cheerful child.
You
For
have to be
me,
exceptional.
you have to be the
You have to be
exceptional
exceptional.
refugee. And that in itself is It's really hard. I've written a lot of poems on the exceptional refugee, and I'll read it probably when we are winding up. But you have to do all of these things, and you have to go beyond the helplessness, even though the environment has taught us learned helplessness.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, learned helplessness because, yeah, they have created it by not allowing people to practice medicine or teaching or being midwives. And then
yes.
you're not using your skills. And then I can't imagine that feeling of being stuck and trapped. I have felt that before under different circumstances. And there's nothing worse for myself than feeling stuck and trapped.
Oof. I think that's one of the hardest thing, to feel stuck and to feel like nothing is out there rooting for you. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's a feeling that so many refugees do have. You're applying for scholarships at the most weirdest or like at the oddest, environment ever. The chances of someone out there seeing you are very low. And someone
Yeah.
actually understanding your context and your community. We live in a community or like in a world where we are skeptical of each other. So you can imagine my job is to elicit empathy, for you to
Yeah.
really see me, for you to really acknowledge me, and that's hard. And when that happens over time, your hope diminishes. You stop
Hi,
believing.
yeah.
You stop
I
believing
don't
like
know how you did it.
searching for university, you age out really easily. You age out
Oh,
of
I
the
didn't even think
system,
about that.
right?
You have such a small window of time.
Yeah. You don't have a long,
Everything is so conditional.
yeah,
There's so many conditional things, like, you have to be at school, but you can't go to school because you don't have access to period products. You needed to only you would think like, you had to sneak out of camp. Nobody helped you. In fact, they would have stopped you. You
yeah,
had to make up your birth date, which, and thankfully, you're clever. So you were able to think through, "Oh, okay, wait a minute. I need to pick a date that's very random."
yeah,
And then you landed on the most random date. How can they question that? Right.
yeah.
And so at every turn, it was just one thing after another where you're just outsmarting the system, really.
You have to outsmart the system, but it's even harder when you don't even understand the system in its place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You can't
As
plan.
as
You're
a
just
refugee,
reacting.
yes, I talked about like the ungrateful refugee. As a refugee, like you feel like you can't ask for human rights. You can't ask for small little like a right of movement. Um, you feel it's a big weight to go and ask for that. Like yeah, in some way, you have to be grateful that you got food this month, but like
That's
small
so
little things like
dehumanizing.
healthcare,
Yeah.
small little things like healthcare, you feel I shouldn't be. That is asking for more. Well, it's a human right, but how do you know that when you don't even know what are your human rights and what you can speak against? When
Yeah.
there's domestic violence or things like that, you don't know how to report because hey, you should be grateful you're not in a war zone. Okay, so
I
there's
mean, it's not
other.
much better. Like,
Yes,
it's really not that much better.
it's not much better. And there's just small things that get to pile out and things like that.
Yeah.
So when
Gosh.
I got to St. Olaf, I just wanted to be a college kid. I went to all the college parties. I knew I could not do mistakes that I couldn't recover from. I went to the Mall of America. And then all of a sudden, there's all these choices like, do you want cheese? Do you want it shredded? Do you want pepper jack, lumberjack? And all of this, I'm like, oh, I am
Lumberjack.
overwhelmed. You go into Caribou, and I've told this story too many times. Like you go to Caribou Coffee, and this person standing right there with like, do you want 2%, 1%, or skip milk? And I'm like, oh, I want to be like the girl in front of me that knows their order so well. And I just wanted to become American, like in some weird way, like ride the school buses because you only used to see them in movies. I just wanted to fit in and assimilate, and in some way, almost it hindered my progress. And I was a theater kid in a theater class where theater kids are so cliquey, they already know that they came from the same high school, perhaps, and they're like,
Hmm.
oh, are you going to see the Glass Menagerie? I'm playing Mamma Mia. I've never auditioned. And I'm right there. And I'm like, okay, everyone can read music. I can barely read anything. You have to go on YouTube and listen to the music and come and audition the next day. I
Wow.
remember when I got the first part of being Dana in Mamma Mia, and I felt like a winner. I'm like, I've cheated the system once again. I'm becoming a great mom.
I
You
mean,
know?
really, like you have,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're constantly, and then but I think for me, the biggest thing is you didn't just keep going, you turned around and you're pulling other people up with you and you're giving hope. And you won an award. The UN gave you an award recently. What was that award for?
It was like the 80th anniversary gala. It was more like an honorarium or something. And I got to this gala in DC at the French embassy. There is, uh, so many people like in the room. And I get to speak about, not being left behind as a refugee again. And in one sense, you feel happy to be honored for the work that you're doing and to get the standing ovation and to get to see people like really care about refugees was a big one for me, and it was just nice to be recognized for the work I get to do in
Yeah.
advocating for refugees, whether that is ending period poverty or education, and the work we do at Elimisha Kakuma. So it was
What
the
was
UN 50th
I
anniversary.
was gonna ask, yeah. So what was the honorarium? What was like what does that look like? Like what is it? Is it a did you get a plaque? Did you get
No, there was no plaque or anything. I just gave a speech.
you just gave
Uh,
a speech?
I just get, and there's nothing I love like talking, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it was just like, hey, we just want to honor your work. And I'm like, okay, I'll show up in DC, you know.
Okay. You
Uh,
just
um,
landed as you do. You got on the plane.
yes,
Yeah.
and just
Well,
get about what I love.
what is one thing that you want people who are listening to take away from what you said? Or what do you wish people knew? I mean, I can't not we can't pretend like the United States is the place that it was when you came in 2019, 2020. I mean,
Yeah.
it is not welcoming to refugees. It's not welcoming to anyone, even if they're citizens, honestly, and they look different. This is a new, tragic world we're living in. And what is your, how are you still functioning? Are you sending students to different countries now for schooling? Like, what does it mean for you? And what do you wish people knew, or what message do you want to get out there?
That's a really tricky question to kind of like get to come through, which is so funny because it's something I should be able to answer, but I'll answer it as the diplomat I am. Okay.
You don't have to be a diplomat.
You kind of like have to in this time, in a way where when everything that is happening is affecting you, even you as an advocate get to be really careful on what you get to say because
Right.
the hardest form of advocacy is the one you have to do for yourself.
Of
And
course.
I think for me, I talked earlier about proximity. When you don't know someone, or when you don't know something, you're afraid of it. I've met so many people in here in the US that once they got to meet me or eat with me or join me in a dance club or something like that, they get to realize that I'm just a girl that is trying to be happy.
Yeah.
When you get to have proximity or when you get to go beyond the refugee title or the other and really get to see people for people, you get to see mothers that care about their children. You get to see
Yeah.
fathers that want to have a job that is dignified. You get to see kids that just want to be teenagers, and caught smoking here and there and, being punished here and that. Like, you get to see that they're just you and
Yeah.
they're just me. And it is really hard to see that when we are so absorbed in how things should be. I did
Mm.
political science too in college, and there's like the realism kind of like of seeing life on like whatever is coming from outside is danger, so I have to like barricade myself. It's human. It's human to kind of like think that way. But in doing so, we also get to shun away people that could bring a whole different perspective to our lives. You know,
Yeah.
in most of the talks that I do, I'm always like, for that immigrant in your class, in your workforce, why don't you just send them a G Calc or like send them a Google Calendar? I'm like, do you want to go for coffee? And for a minute, it's not even about me listening to your story, but rather me listening to your story. And you get to see the commonality in our shared humanity. We are at a time where humanity is being lost
Yeah.
because we are becoming so desensitized to things happening around us. Wars have become too common, and so we pick up our phones, we go on Instagram, and we tweet, and we forget about that war, and we think about the next one that will happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the reality is, behind those tweets is someone's 25 years in a camp somewhere
25 years.
or
Yeah. Their
more.
whole life.
It's someone's life of readjusting because we forgot about it. For someone like me, our wars were never documented. We were the silent witnesses. So, like, our parents were the silent people that we could only know that story in songs or, like, if in oral narrative. Nowadays, we have phones that we can, like, record the atrocities that are happening, but we also become immune to them. When violence is around you for too long, you get to feel like it's normal. I was listening to a podcast by Trevor Noah, What Now? And just a few days ago, and they were talking about, for instance, like the school shootings in the US, where
Oh, yeah.
when the first school shooting happened, everyone was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Nowadays, it happens like daily bread. It's like we we get
We've
used
accepted yeah, we've
and we
accepted too
accept it,
much.
but the
We've accepted
reality is
too much.
the trauma and what people have to go through is a lot.
Yeah.
The same happened to refugees, like and immigrants within your community. They're coming from a past. When people come to the US, it's not because they love it so much that they have to abandon their own homes. It's because home didn't allow them to stay,
Yeah.
and when they come here, they want to be a part of a community. But it's hard to become a part of a community when the community doesn't even want you or even know that they're just like you. Uh, I don't know if that's the political or like the most like diplomatic way for me to talk about it.
It
But
was the most beautiful way and the most it was it is the most, important way to talk about it, especially right now and always until hopefully this isn't an issue anymore, because I think that you're right. We're becoming not desensitized, you said it earlier, we're becoming dehumanized because we've accepted too much violence, we've accepted that that's the way, and I think that's been such a downfall. I
yeah,
mean, globally.
globally.
And I think we've accepted that we can't do anything about it.
Yeah. It's easier to solve a problem that we think we can solve.
Right.
And it's hard to work on those that are hard. I'll give you like a quick example. Sorry, I know like we're getting to
No,
time.
you're okay. Keep going.
My partner, he works with people here in New York City, like in jail systems and helping youth get back to community, mostly black and brown communities. And he also works with refugees like in Africa and the Middle East. And I remember one time he told me like so many donors would rather go to an African country and give a kid an opportunity because they see it's easy solution. Then you see that kid
Mhm.
going to college and they become successful.
Yeah,
While the United States, it's a bigger problem because it's
right.
a whole system that they have to fight. And they feel like, oh, I'm going to be wasting my money to do this. I think that happens a lot when we feel like a problem is too big for us, we go and choose something that is easier to kind of like, to solve.
Right,
And
and you can see an outcome. It's
yeah,
like it's more not instant gratification, but you know what's going to happen at the end of it. And you can check the box that you feel good about yourself and you did something.
Yeah.
So I want to hear in the last few minutes that we have, I do want to hear some of your writing about being the exceptional refugee, which you are exceptional anyways. Can we just say that?
Yeah.
You could have been born, you could have been born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, you would be exceptional. You could have been born in Kentucky, you'd be like, you're just exceptional anyways. You are just given extreme circumstances. And I just am so grateful that I even met you. Honestly, that makes me feel like that moment was exceptional.
I love it. The exceptional refugee. I'm just going to read out of my little diary. To be an exceptional refugee means to break yourself down in crowds, to recount memories long buried, the ones that make you animal, the ones that make you bear. To be an exceptional refugee means standing bare, paraded and examined in public views, next to the magazine photos of children dying, flies mapping their rib cage like coordinates. It means becoming the break in media feed that makes you feel good about your life. This exceptional refugee takes a bullet to the head, or the eye perhaps, and still smiles for the brochures. They become your expert in pain, your diversity win, your discomfort. The exceptional refugee is resettled, granted a scholarship, given a stage, while a room full of policymakers debates her future without her. She fights hard to be the top. She performs resilience. She wrestles her trauma into something tender, something digestible, then offers it wrapped in hope. A curated facade of what you want to see. The idea of the exceptional refugee forgets, or is made to forget, the silent refugee, the one caged behind camp walls, the one who lines up at 3 a.m. for cornmeal and a bar of soap, the one schools ignores, the one who applies to 50 institutions but is denied for lacking 20% of the fees, the one who goes from office to office to cover the hidden cost of taking that flight to a university, who lacks document, who doesn't even understand what document she needs, who can't afford exams nor travel to the exam test, whose Wi-Fi keeps cutting when trying to submit the commoner, the one who menstruates in camps, the one who lactates in camps, marries in camps, dies in camp, silent Venuses, but not really silent, just not hard, trapped. And so the exceptional refugee comes to represent us all, but she doesn't know us all. The small little writing. Yeah.
That was incredible. I can't wait to read your book, and I want every update on your play coming up. I just want to say thank you so much for your time today because it was, the insights that I got from you and hearing the full story was really powerful. And I hope that anyone who's listening will at least go and look at your two startups that you're working on, follow you, see the things that Duolingo is doing, and maybe even just thinking about and remembering our humanity at the end of the day. Because again, we have to fight for that too. We didn't know it. Not all of us knew it. You knew it, but it's become so evident that, we just have to every day choose to be human and see others as human too.
Yeah.
Thank you again. We will put the links to both. I can't say it.
Elimisha Kakuma. God,
Elimisha Kakuma.
so many
Yes,
things.
Elimisha Kakuma. I will practice that. And then the other organization, I can't remember the name
There's
of.
a
What was
part,
it again?
it's called Could You? It's like, could you use a
Oh,
men's.com?
could you? Yes. Yes.
Could you? And then UNHCR. Oh my God, I'm everywhere all at once. You can also support Duolingo. Get that
Yeah,
app, and that's
you're
how
everywhere.
you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'll put your website as well, because of course you have plenty of not plenty of speaking availability, but you offer speaking.
Yes.
And yeah, so people can know how to find you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. This is amazing. I'm so glad I met you.
I'm so glad I met you.
I know I was looking for fries and a table to sit at, but I'm glad
Listen,
that you're also chatty, which is good.
I'm
So,
so chatty.
yes.
No, we're both curious. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we will have to catch up soon. But in the meantime, thank you so much for being here today, Mary.